Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Squadron Leader Karen Charles. Today marks 25 years since the main body of the 1st Australian Services Contingent arrived in Kigali as part of the United Nations Assistance Mission to Rwanda. From April 1994, the small African nation of Rwanda was the site of one of the most brutal and concentrated genocides of the 20th century. Approximately 800,000 people were slaughtered in just 3 months. Millions more were forced to flee as refugees to the camps across Rwanda and its neighbouring countries. 2 Australian services contingents of more than 300 personnel served in Rwanda between August 1994 and August 1995. Both the 1st and 2nd Australian services contingents to Rwanda faced difficult and traumatic conditions as they provided medical assistance for people affected by the bitter ethnic violence, civil war and rampant disease. At times, they bore witness to brutal massacres, such as those at Bazanzi in January 1995 and Kibeho in April. In each case, the Australians' presence did their best to treat the wounded, but were often overwhelmed by scale and brutality of the violence they faced. Events such as these had severe effects on many Australian peacekeepers, and many still face the difficulties of post-traumatic stress to this day. Today we pay tribute to the service of all those who served in Rwanda. We warmly welcome Mr Dennis Lyons from the ACT Naval Association. We also welcome members of the Naval Warrant Officer Promotion Course that are joining us for this evening's ceremony. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. And during this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors and students on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, Irrawang Public School from Raymond Terrace. From Victoria, Princess Hill Primary School. And from Western Australia, All Saints College Secondary Campus. Australia's Federation Guard is a tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catapult party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier within the Hall of Memory. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Attention! Take arms!
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is birth by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts, of beauty rich and rare. In history's page let every state advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Everybody, shoulder, arms. Everybody, shoulder, arms.
Students, you may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway lands. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Stoker Third Class Robert Stevenson and the ship's company of HMAS Sydney, who were lost after engaging the German surface raider Cormoran in 1941. Robert Stevenson was born in the Sydney suburb of Erskineville on the 15th of January 1924 to the son of James and Maud Stevenson. His older brother Joseph had been born in December 1919. Stevenson grew up and went to school in the Kingswood district, but little else is known of his early life. He joined the Royal Australian Naval Reserve in 1939, following the outbreak of the Second World War. Stevenson was called up for full-time duty on the 31st of March 1941 and sent to the Navy depot HMAS Rushcutter, located in Sydney's Rushcutter Bay. At the beginning of May, he was posted to HMAS Cerberus, the Navy's training establishment some 70 kilometres south of Melbourne on Western Port Bay. On the 15th of September, he was posted to the ship's company of HMAS Sydney. A modified Leander-class light cruiser, Sydney was armed with 8 6-inch guns and was the pride of the Royal Australian Navy. Built in England, the cruiser was commissioned into the Navy in 1935. Following the outbreak of war, Sydney was one of several Australian warships sent to the Mediterranean, where it had demonstrated its fighting prowess, sinking the Italian cruiser Bartolomeo Colleone in the Battle of Cape Spada on the 19th of July 1940. In February 1941, Sydney returned home to Australia, where it received a hero's welcome. For much of the year, the cruiser was engaged in escort duties that took the cruiser to the Netherlands, East Indies, Singapore, Noumea, Auckland and Suva before returning to Western Australian waters. On the 19th of November 1941, Sydney was steaming back to Fremantle, having escorted a troop ship part of the way to Singapore. At about 4 p.m, the cruiser spotted a suspicious merchant ship and decided to investigate. By 5:30 p.m, Sydney had almost drawn alongside the vessel when it suddenly revealed its true identity as a German raider. Hoisting its German naval ensign, Cormoran fired its guns and torpedoes. Its first salvo slammed into Sydney's bridge. The Australian cruiser returned fire, but the raider's second and third salvos again hit Sydney's bridge and amidships. Its 3 main turrets were soon out of action, but a fourth kept up fast and accurate fire that hit Cormoran's funnel and engine room. Sydney in turn was hit by a torpedo between turrets. Mortally damaged and ablaze, Sydney turned away from the raider, continuing to fight using its secondary armament and torpedoes. Cormoran was also burning. At 6:25 p.m, its captain gave the order to abandon ship. As the German sailors evacuated their stricken vessel, they watched the Australian cruiser, now only a distant glow on the dark horizon, disappear into the night. By midnight, Sydney was gone, lost with all 645 hands, including Stevenson, who was just 17 years old. Robert Stevenson is commemorated on the Plymouth Naval Memorial in Britain. His name is also listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Stoker, Third Class Robert Stevenson, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If you're able, please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
National Party, shoulder, arms.
They have no grave but the cruel sea. No flowers lay at their head. A rusting hulk is their tombstone, a fast on the ocean bed. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, And in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Federal Party, present arms.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys and students, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.